Greetings Gemini, and a warm welcome to your in-depth year 2024 astrology and horoscope forecast. This is for the sun or the ascendant. I'm going to give you a brief structure of how I'm going to lay out this video. We need to look at the eclipses of October 2023. They're still active in the early months of the new year. One's incredibly promising for you personally. The other one could be a lot more sensitive. As we enter 2024, we can take a snapshot of the planetary influences at that exact moment. That's your solar return. We need to look at Mercury, your ruler. It is in retrograde as the year starts, but it's also in a very robust combination with Mars. What does that mean? Venus is also located in a very, very interesting position, the planet of relating. So relationships very much to the fore with the energy that is going to permeate out over the following 12 months. But don't be surprised if you're thinking about improving where you live, or moving altogether, or taking a different approach to your home environment, getting a balance between the emotional side of things but also the physical structure and money through a grand earth trine at the very start of this year between the sun in Capricorn, Jupiter in Taurus and the moon in Virgo. So can't wait to share that with you too. Now you know that the nodal axis moved last July on the 17th, and that does continue across your 11th and 5th house cusp all of this year. But there's a fascinating link between the North Node and Chiron at the end of February that is important to tell you about. But we also have a repetition of that axis through the eclipses this year, but we also have a new eclipse series coming in September, and that is going to influence your direction of travel in terms of work and ambitions. It's also going to be in a conjunction with the dreamy, drifting influence of Neptune, so that's important to check out. Now, that big energy in your 11th house, the sign of Aries, is emphasized more because your ruler Mercury is going to be there for 10 long weeks. And the reason, Gemini, is that Mercury is going to go through 4 lots of fire retrogrades this year, but it's also going to briefly retrograde into the earth sign of Virgo and then go back into Leo, your 5th solar house, very much to do with joys and social interaction, and then back into Virgo. So that's interesting, but that 10-week period when Mercury is in your 11th house is going to see a lot of attention to who you mix with, who you network with, your higher ideas, but also crucially that direction of travel. But there's going to be opportunities in the autumn in the north and in the spring in the southern hemisphere to engage much more with your desires around love and romance, with an annular solar eclipse in the sign of Libra, which occurs on the 2nd of October. But it is forging a link with your ruler Mercury, so really exciting. But I want to tell you also about your personal new moon, which occurs on the 6th of June. This is our opportunity once a year to really showcase and set our intentions for the things that are important to us in an individual context. And that one is incredibly close, only 31 minutes away from the rather sultry and seductive energies of Venus. Jupiter also moves into your sign, which can have big possibilities in terms of your desire to create a better outcome, to be more positive, to really invest energy in the things that make you come alive and where you feel that you can show passion. And Jupiter moves into your sign on the 26th of May, which is going to be great for your vitality, but it is pretty close to the new moon on the 6th of June too. But there is a complication on that new moon, so I do need to explain that to you as well. But in terms of your work, goals and career objectives, we do need to check out what's going on with Saturn and Neptune all through this year, including the retrogrades. Also what's going on in terms of your transformations, Pluto. Pluto does go through 2 signs, twice through the sign of Capricorn. And love and relationships, it's a burning question for many of us, whether we're in a tide that is going well or not, or we'd like to meet somebody. I'm going to look at where Venus is going through your 5th house, which is from the end of August through till the 3rd week of September, and also through your sector of relating, which is the 17th of October through to November the 11th. But just be aware that Mercury does slam on the brakes in the sign of Sagittarius, your 7th house of relating, from the 26th of November to the 15th of December. So relationships are going to be a very important part of your thinking this year, but I just need to go through all of these things in minute detail to give you as much clarity as possible. I'd just like to share with you a very special opportunity. If you're watching this video in year 2023, you can order your year 2024 personal horoscope forecast based on your unique birth data, and I will prepare for you the rest of year 2023 free of charge. If you're ordering within year 2024, you will get a full 12 months from the exact time of your order. You will also, my special package, get 30% off and your character analysis report, your life roadmap. This will help you to understand the patterns that have repeated themselves in your situation, help you to seize upon the opportunities and get a much more intimate understanding of some of the challenges and how you can work with them future forwards in a more effective way. Please see beneath this video for more information. So Gemini, first of all, let's look at those eclipses of October. The first, the solar eclipse, is full of promise for you, very much to do with expressing the warmth of your personality, but also demonstrating your creativity and flair. It can be very good for your social situation. But the lunar eclipse, which occurs on the 28th, is much more psychological. It's in the sign of Taurus, but you do have Jupiter in this location, very much to do with higher spiritual knowledge, and also Uranus to do with higher truths. So a lot of extra understanding could come into your situation through the first months of 2024 if you're open to it, certainly until Jupiter makes its way into your sign on the 26th of May. There can be an opportunity to become much more conscious about all sorts of things that maybe you've kind of known about but perhaps not given quite as much attention to. Some of those shadow parts of our own way of being, but also your understanding of more spiritual trends or healing are really going to be emphasized by that lunar eclipse and Jupiter and Uranus. So just be conscious as you come into the new year. It's going to be important to stay in touch with that side of your situation, even though the friendship and sociable part of your life is going to be buzzing with lots of different influences and energy. Now, as we make our way into the new year, obviously we have the solar return. So on the screen now, I'm sharing your chart wheel. The big takeout here is your ruler Mercury. It's in retrograde, but it is in a very combustible conjunction with Mars. If you need to defend your position in 2024, the chances are these two are going to help you to do it. The problem is because Mercury is retrograde and they're both in a square with Neptune, the information that you decide to push back on may at times turn out not to be completely accurate. So just be aware that Neptune can be distorting to everyone's reality. And it is in your sector of work. So it may be when you come into contact with some leaders, bosses, perhaps people in your community, whether it's professional or local community, you may encounter other people who frustratingly don't see things quite as quickly and logically as you, because Mercury in a conjunction with Mars is going to make you even speedier on your take, but it's also going to see you quite combative. Now, if you're someone who enjoys any kind of competition, whether it's in a physical context through sport, or perhaps you like to run yourself or cycle and swim and you're very aware of your best times, Mercury conjunct Mars could be quite good for you. But just be aware that Mercury is detrimented in the sign of Sagittarius, so it is important to make sure that what you think the reality is, your perception of your philosophy and what the actual facts are actually going to marry up, because both Mercury is retrograde in the exaggerating sign of Sagittarius, and Neptune's ability to really disturb the clarity around situations is something to be mindful of. So when you're having discussions with professional colleagues or any kind of in your work, there could be a sense at times that you could be giving it everything, leaning into other people's situations, but they're either being rather elusive, distant, or perhaps quite critical with Mars, because Mars is quite a reactive influence. Actually, it's very athletic in the sign of Sagittarius. So, if you do find that frustrations build up this year, whether it is going for a run, a swim, a stiff walk, whatever it is, that can actually be very good. Now, if you're someone who prefers to stretch your cerebral energies much more, this still can be very good. And if you enjoy chess, for example, or Sudoku or crosswords, or you're a gamer and you come into direct combat with others, using your mind is going to give you quite a lot of pleasure. But again, there can be that potential for distortion. Now, when we look at a natal chart, without doubt, the most influential influence is the position or the planet that's right at the top. So we're talking about the daylight position. So we're talking about the 10th house cusp, and that sees Saturn in the sign of Pisces, just there, right at the top, suggesting if you wanted to take on more responsibilities this year, there could be opportunities to do so. But also, we need to be mindful of Venus. That's right on your 7th house cusp, the descendant. That's where we connect to others. That's a beautiful position for Venus to be honest. But it is conflicted by Saturn and also by the moon. So we have a T-square. So just be aware that with Mars and Mercury seeing you quite earnest in the way you connect to others, Venus at times very diplomatic, it still may feel that the person you're trying to reach, whether it is someone in a position of influence or a potential new employer or a potential new client, could just seem quite cool to how you're coming across. And that can create frustrations. Also, because the moon is opposite Saturn in your 4th house, you may have to push yourself a little bit to get beyond any part of your nature that may see you a little diffident about attending interviews, getting in touch with people, raising your profile. If you want to be successful in work this year, you really are going to have to work at it. But your skill as a communicator definitely gives you a chance, because although Venus, Mercury and Mars are in Sagittarius, for you the 7th house is very Libran, and you have the ruler of the sign of Libra, Venus, right on that 7th house cusp. So it is possible you can make progress, but you just need to be aware that either home-based issues, maybe the responsibility of children or older family members, or heavy work-based pressures could have an impact on your relationships. The other thing I wanted to share with you is that ground Earth trine. You can see that the Sun is in the sign of Capricorn, as it always is at the turn of the year, at 10 degrees and 2 minutes. But for you, this is house 8. Now, Pluto has been creating great transformation in that area for you since 2015, all but 11 months of last year, when it briefly went into Aquarius. Now, you can see the Sun is forging a superb link within, it's about 4.5 degrees with Jupiter. So the Sun in a trine, 120 degrees with Jupiter, the most buoyant and outgoing and positive influence, is super lovely. It is very reinforcing, but they're also soothing, taking the pressure off the moon's opposition to Saturn, because they link to the moon in a very stable way too. So in terms of Earth, we need to be thinking about structures, we need to think about money, and it can be about where we need to feel physically as well as emotionally secure. But look at the house numbers they're in. Sun 8, Scorpio, Jupiter 12, Pisces, Moon 4, Cancer. So your need for something that's safe and stable in terms of your home, 8th house can be to do with property, investments, long-term financial planning, pensions, savings. The 12th house can be the more spiritual domain. So Jupiter in Taurus slows down, but not in a negative way. It makes it actually a little bit more thoughtful, not quite so impulsive. But the link then to the moon in the very precise and practical Virgo suggests that you can get a good balance between using your resources wisely, but in a way that gives you an emotional benefit. So I feel that who you live with, how you live there, or where you live and how you live there are going to be big themes this year. And I think some Geminis will improve existing abodes, but others will likely move. I just want to share with you about your midpoint. It's in Scorpio. It's at 8 degrees. For you, this is house 6. House 6 is where we need to be virtuous, to make sure that the details of things are well thought through. We're being very discriminatory in terms of how we use our energy. It's a good midpoint to think about your nutrition and diet and exercise for the whole year. But of course, it's in the deep, sometimes confrontational sign of Scorpio. But what you can take is that some big change is going to come positively around your health this year, particularly with Jupiter opposing the midpoint. You can see across the heavens in your 12th house of psychology. So the more you embrace the more psychological domain, Jupiter, and also Uranus in your 12th house, but also that lunar eclipse which occurred on the 28th of October 2023, the more you can embrace that more psychological dimension, the more you will thrive in the early part of this year. Now I just want to take you forwards to the 2nd of January, because on that day Mercury, your ruler, goes direct. If you have gone through some frustration around a relationship, not necessarily a romantic one, but just hearing back from someone, maybe it is about a job, or you've reached out about something that you're interested in and you just haven't had a response, because so much is automated these days. When we don't get a response, we can feel very isolated. But almost immediately on the 2nd, things can speed up. Obviously, Mercury has to come out of the post-retrograde shadow, but on the 21st of January, we have a mightily fine event for you in particular. And particularly if you're born across the first 3 or 4 days of the sign of Gemini, because Pluto moves back into the sign of Aquarius this year for 38 weeks. But as it does so, it also is in a conjunction to the Sun in Aquarius. The first 2.5 degrees of each zodiac sign in the Indian Dward or 12th harmonic approach is an amplified energy of that sign. So I feel the more Uranian and progressive energy of Aquarius, but also the ability to be very pragmatic, the Saturnian co-rulership of that sign, is something that you can embrace, but in an expansive way. If you're someone who wants to travel this year, or you want to travel in your mind, or you want to embrace healing, or you want to embrace a more spiritual dimension, I feel that's a very positive return of Pluto to Aquarius, and it's going to see you really very passionate and invested in making your life more exciting, and you could be up for some big changes. If, however, you found when Pluto went through Aquarius last year a bit more challenging, it may be because your Gemini positions, including the Sun, are located more towards the rear of the sign. So the issue there is a quincunx, and that is quite a challenging influence. It's 150 degrees, and it can be difficult to make everything cohesive. So if you are born right at the end of Gemini, be aware that Pluto's pushing you to change, but it's pushing you to change in some deeply psychological ways. Not so much like the 12th house, it's more don't hold on to things that you're being prompted to release. So the whole process of renewal and rebirth that Pluto can push is going to be particularly relevant if you're more towards the end of the sign of Gemini. But it is a sparkling influence. It's going to be here for 38 weeks this year, and it's a great opportunity if you've got something you want to share with people. So if you are a person who's got that proverbial book inside of you, this year you could write it. If you're someone who's already published, or you have a website or a blog, you're going to be absolutely on fire this year. Your desire to reach a wider audience is going to be extremely strong indeed. And I just want to take you forwards to the end of February, because the North Node is going to meet the position of Chiron, the wounded healer. If you're someone, despite the archetype of your sign, that gets on with everyone very easily, you can pivot. Sometimes people find it frustrating that they feel that you're different people within the person you are. But that is a talent. But it may be that within that talent, you still don't necessarily feel a great sense of connection at times. It's an often used term these days. It's not one that I'm particularly keen on, but I think it will illustrate the point. I feel that if you're someone who's found it difficult to find your tribe, you'll find it easier towards the end of February, or you'll find it easier to understand why it's been painful in the past. If you found it difficult to find the balance between being your own person and also feeling wanted or included in some kind of collective, there is opportunities for growth at the end of February. So let's look at the lunar eclipse, which occurs on the 25th of March. This is like the mirror of the solar eclipse, which occurred on the 14th of October. So that gave you an opportunity to try to manifest your individuality in the way that you mix and mingle but connect to others. If it's going well, that can be something you can really savour and appreciate. But if there are some tensions around group involvements, or you feel your time is too compromised, you're trying to keep too many people happy too much of the time, something that, does happen to a lot of people. We have all these technologies to help us, but we seem to have less and less time. So that may be what the lunar eclipse is going to espouse in you. So there could be some tension. But as soon as the 8th of April, when the total solar eclipse occurs in your 11th house, very much about that collective and friendships, that is conjunct the retreating Mercury in your 11th house. So I feel that this could be a new beginning for some Gemini people. I don't want to make things simplistic and say you're going to have a complete clear out of all your friends. I just don't think it works like that. You're the one who's in charge of the process. The astrology can create some impulses. We can use that energy in an outward way, and we can be influenced by it in an inward way. So what we receive from the heavens, but also it's how we respond. And both ultimately give us some chances to make our own decisions. But I feel it is possible that you could review. So I give you an example of how I feel this may play out. Sometimes in life we can have a big aspiration, and when we get to it, we think, this doesn't actually mean that much to me anymore. I'm pleased I've done it. Maybe it's, qualified in a particular skill, or got a degree, or saved up a degree of money, or whatever it is. And when we get to that moment of success, what's happened is that we've actually changed, and what we want future forwards has altered. So it could be as subtle as that is manifested through that total solar eclipse through the following 6 months. But because Mercury is retrograde in your sector of friendship, it wouldn't be a surprise if there were some changes. Now, I mentioned before that there is a new eclipse series coming in across the axis of Virgo and Pisces, and that shows itself on the 18th of September. But this does need some care because it is in your 10th house of responsibilities, but very close to Neptune. I feel that balancing your emotional needs and your professional hopes may be quite challenging. And of course, you know from your solar return that you've got the opposition between the Moon and Saturn across the same 4th, 10th axis. So this is kind of like a reboot to that rather challenging energy. There may not necessarily be a total solution to this, only that we shouldn't be tricked by Neptune, but we can also be heightened by Neptune, so we can use our instincts to guide us in a positive way. But also the annular solar eclipse, which occurs in Libra on the 2nd of October, could see the last part of this year so exciting for you, because it's in a conjunction with Mercury, your ruler, a much tighter one than the solar eclipse of April. But this one can see that natural ability you have to get on with lots of different types of people really be burnished. And of course, by this time of the year, from the 26th of May, Jupiter has burst into your sign, giving you a lot of enthusiasm, extra verve and brio, and that is a very bubbly combination. So that's something to really look forward to in that latter influence in the year. But what about Mercury? Well, Mercury is going to emerge from that long 10-week transition through the sign of Aries. It is then going to go into the sign of Leo subsequently, which again gives you the opportunity to use your mind in a very passionate and skillful and very alert way. But it then goes into then goes into Virgo, then goes into a retrograde. So there's a back and forwards, and eventually Mercury goes back into Virgo on September the 9th, out of the retrograde. So some kind of thinking. Remember I said to you about where to live and who with. There could be a lot of conversation around that through the summer months in the northern and the winter months in the southern hemisphere. But it's also important to know about your personal new moon, and that occurs on June the 6th. And it is quite an extraordinary stellar lineup, because Venus is only 31 minutes away from an exact conjunction to the Sun. The Sun hasn't passed it, so the Sun is actually applying to Venus. In traditional astrology, they would say that Venus is therefore loses its power due to the radiance of the Sun. It's not close enough to be in Cazimi, which is within 17 minutes. In modern astrology, I think the argument would be that the Sun can amplify and warm up Venus's qualities. The first house is obviously about where we can revitalise ongoing strands that are important to us, set our intentions for new, fresh approaches, perhaps give ourselves a glamorous makeover, be more dynamic, and you're going to have Jupiter and Mercury in Gemini 2 at this time. So that is all incredibly exciting. So what's the catch? Well, I'm afraid it is Saturn. So Saturn is in a square with Venus at the start of this year, and then at the time of your new moon, it's squaring Venus again. Now, this works in a different way, because Venus in your sign could see people attracted to you because you are different. The solar return is asking you to reach into other people a bit more, use your diplomacy. The new moon's asking you to be authentically you. But whichever way you go this year, you're going to find someone who just seems to always feel that maybe you're not heading in the right direction. Now, the chances are this could be a parent, it could be a partner, it could be a line manager, it could be the environment that you're trying to exist within. We're all seeing this huge change in person kind, and we're all having to try and keep up. So in terms of Venus, which can be about relating, it can be about our sense of attractiveness, it can be about the way we present ourselves, of course it can be about money and about our self-worth, but Saturn in your 10th house suggests that either your own intrinsic conservatism could get in the way of your relationships this year, professional or personal, or perhaps is it your own caution or your own fear. You know, it depends on your relationship to Saturn. I don't think Saturn and Jupiter are binary. I don't think Jupiter's all amazing, and I don't think Saturn's all awful. You do get that sentiment a lot on YouTube, to be honest. It's much more subtle than that. Saturn can bring reward. So if you really wanted to work at your relationships this year, perhaps that's what Saturn's saying to you. But it may mean that there could be some compromises that need to be made. However, if we want to talk about when Venus makes its way in terms of pure love through your 5th house, 29th of August through to the 23rd of September, and for sure that's going to see you giving out a really marvellous vibe. And then in the 7th house from the 17th of October to November the 11th, your ability to relate into people like you have right from the start of the year is burnished up in a very positive way indeed. But when it comes to work, career, goals and success, we need to think about the role of Mars as it goes through your sign, July the 20th to September the 4th. Your willpower and single-mindedness will be enhanced through that period. But in terms of setting your big targets, Saturn is asking you to be patient and persistent. Neptune is asking you to be imaginative and at the same time instinctive. But there's no doubt about it that both those things can slow us down, especially in a combination, because Saturn can, present obstacles, give us a little bit less vitality, seem that all the things that we need to achieve require a lot of hard work and application. But if we work with the better and more positive energies of the two, see it like that. I just feel that the retrograde from Neptune's viewpoint from the 2nd of July to the 7th of December is important, because you need to be mindful that maybe you're going to rethink things a little bit if you don't feel that you don't really feel that what you're doing gives you much uplift in terms of the spiritual dimension. And then in terms of Saturn's retrograde, as usual, 4.5 months of the year, and that could seem like those burdens at work are increasing. But Jupiter is going to give you the potential for benevolence this year. It is going to reinforce your physical vitality. So there's so much to go for. So to, in a snapshot, give you the overview of this year, particularly with Mercury back into Sagittarius from the 2nd of September in your 7th house where it starts the year, and particularly in retrograde from November the 26th to the 15th of December, there could be a sense by the end of the year of some kind of deja vu. So relationships are going to be important. I think that's the big takeout from this year. But what you say needs to be something that is very relatable to from the other person's side. So they need to know where you are. I think Mars could make you rush some conversations in its combination with Mercury at the start of the year to try to resist that, but it can also protect you to stop people taking advantage of you in terms of your goodwill. So I feel relationships are going to be important, but also where you live, how you live there, and whom with. I see a change there. I also see a change where you need to be doing work that gives you some kind of personal satisfaction, the midpoint in Scorpio. And Saturn on the 10th house cusp suggests if you really want to aim for the stars, you can do it, but it could be a little bit like the 10 of Wands. You can make the progress to the summit, but you're going to have to really put in the graft in order to keep things going. So with the Mercury retrograde through the fire signs this year, you're going to be passionate at times, perhaps a little bit frustrated, but there's an enormous opportunity to get much clearer about your spiritual direction. And I feel that as Jupiter makes its way into your sign, and with the help of the nodal axis, and particularly the second of the solar eclipses on the 2nd of October, you can bring the last quarter of this year into being a much more exciting, interactive time for you, because I feel that you will have clarified a lot of that future directional issues about your friendships, the things you believe in, but also where you live and where you work. It's been a real pleasure being with you, Gemini. I'm wishing you all the best for this year. Please like, share, comment or subscribe.